I'm Catherine Arndt, the Chief of the VLGA Connect Studio. Welcome to today's episode, brought to you by the VLGA, your counsellor support network and the national broadcaster on all things local government.
Hi everyone and welcome back to VLGA Connect. Every now and then we get to meet one of the heads of various agencies in the state that work very closely with local government, and I'm delighted today to have for the first time on the program the CEO of Recycling Victoria, Tony Circelli. Tony, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, really nice to meet you.
Great to meet you as well.
It's great to be online today.
And you've been in the role as of now nearly a year, so you've certainly got your feet under the desk. How's the baptism of fire, if you like, been for the last 10 months or so?
Oh, look, it's been an exhilarating and quite an amazing sort of journey so far, I've got to say. And there's just so much happening here in Victoria, and trying to sort of understand where I guess Victoria and all the stakeholders are up to has been, really, really fascinating for me, just to see the journey everyone's on. But as you say, like it's nearly a year now, and just been sort of an amazing journey for 10 months so far.
And you've come in at a pretty exciting time with some of the stuff that's happening, which we will get to. But can I assume that that's one of the things that attracted you to this role?
Yeah, it is, Chris. I mean, I've been working in this sector for some time. If people don't know, I'm South Australian, and have been working with the South Australian EPA for over 20 years, and headed it up for the last 8.5 or so. Really, with a couple of areas of passion and priority for me, and one of them was this area of the circular economy. There's just this emerging need and expectation from the community, and in turn from governments and industry, around how do we get the most out of our materials, and how do we sort of get to a more sustainable way of living going forward. And I think also with I guess the importance around net zero and looking at our carbon footprint and so forth. This is just a really fascinating space that I've been on and been in for well over 10 years now, both at a state and national level. So look, I think Victoria is on an amazing pathway here, and the opportunity was too good to refuse when it came up. So.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're almost a Victorian. You're from Mount Gambier, aren't you? Just across the border?
Yeah, I think Mount Gambier people often wonder, which side of the border they sit on. But it is very much a regional economy down in Mount Gambier, I sort of grew up there, sort of watching sort of east and west in terms of things like AFL and VFL, back in the day and so forth. So very familiar. Played sport in Victoria because of I guess the border location as well. So relatively familiar with the western western precincts of Victoria. But I have spent my working career in Adelaide and up until 10 months ago.
So in the new role at Recycling Victoria, let's talk a bit about the changes to the structure of the system, because perhaps people in local government land are still trying to get their head around what's changed. We used to have those advisory groups and forums, etc. That's all been replaced by this new entity, correct?
Yeah, well, I think it's being replaced by it's probably more accurate to say by a new framework.
Right.
There's a new act that the government established called the Circular Economy Waste Reduction and Recycling Act of 2021, and in there they have put their aspiration to have a more effective, a more resilient, and a more prepared waste and resource recovery sector, but also to promote and enable towards a more circular economy for the state. And as part of that, they introduce my position, which is the head of Recycling Victoria, with a number of functions and powers that works towards those purposes and those goals and outcomes. And for the first time, in Australia, really, there's a number of new tools that have been put in place to help me and our staff to help the sector, including local government, to be more to have, I guess, work in a more resilient and more certain environment, so that we can get better outcomes out of the waste and resource recovery sector.
Right.
That's quite different to the system that came before it, which was more of a sort of enabling and engagement approach across the state, both in the regions and in Melbourne, where WERGs would often be part of collaborative procurements and assist and support local government in collaborative procurements. We still happy to talk more about sort of what our role will be in helping and supporting local government in procurement. But we have now taken on, I guess, a more oversight role for service providers in the system, including local government. And that means that the type of supports will be different, but no less important, though. So different, but I think much more of a whole of sector, more strategic role to sort of help local government in this next phase of progressing better outcomes in waste and resource recovery, and of course better outcomes, driving towards a more circular economy for the state.
Where does Recycling Victoria sit vis-a-vis Sustainability Victoria? Is there crossover there?
Yeah, look, there should be crossover. I mean, we sit closely with the EPA, and we sit closely with Sustainability Victoria, and indeed the department as well, which has been driving all the legislative change. Sustainability Victoria is the key communication and behaviour change entity for not just the circular economy, but also for our net zero and our energy transformation and energy transition as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that they continue to do that. So we work with our reforms are done with the collaboration of Sustainability Victoria, and of course Sustainability Victoria has had a really important role in terms of grants and activating particular areas in this transition and reform in the circular economy as well. So that role continues. Our role is a little bit different to that, in the sense that we have the mandate and the responsibility to look at the whole marketplace, to look at what's not happening and what should be occurring to a better extent in particular market streams. So whether that might be in the organic stream or whether it be in the glass stream, we will have a whole of system view and have the ability to first understand it with our data and our information, but also then, what are the insights to be learned from what we know about the particular system? How do we share those insights with players like local government and industry? And importantly, how do we get together and understand where we need to put our efforts to improving that system, or indeed trying to take the most of the opportunities that we might identify in some of those whole of market systems. So it's a little bit different, but definitely very engaged and very aligned with the role not only of SV but also the EPA and the policy role of the department.
Oh, good. Thank you. It's good to understand those distinctions. So, Tony, local government, a key stakeholder, quite clearly. How are you working with councils, and how would you like to be working with councils into the future?
Well, one of the first things, Chris, that I was very keen to do when I arrived here in October, and of course, if we sort of go back to October, it was quite a difficult time for the state because we were having flooding issues, particularly to the north of the state, but also here in Melbourne. So it was a little bit difficult, and I think my plans to engage were a little bit affected somewhat because of that. But between November and February of this year, so November last year, February this year, we effectively, the executive team, myself, toured right across the state. We did nearly, I think the stats were, some 2,000 kilometres of travelling, really to try and, get to local government as a first priority, to really understand where local government was at right across the state. Local government is a very diverse group of entities, and from here in metro area to the big regional capitals to the smaller regional cities to the quite remote cities, that they all have different needs. And it was really important for me to sort of understand, just where the different parts of local government were at and according to the different regions across the state. So that sort of, for me, started a particular way of operating that I really would like to see Recycling Victoria continue, which is to get out and actually see people, meet with people, understand, but also share information in a two-way dialogue and two-way collaboration. Going forward, Chris, what we want to do is look at that engagement approach probably in three different ways. One, recognising that the programs that we deliver are for the state. That's both for the regions, for the metro areas, for the whole state. We want to make sure that those products that we'll maybe come to soon, some of the new things that we're delivering to improve the performance of the sector, we want people to be able to engage directly with us around that. So it's trying to make sure that we've got those program-related engagement approaches with local government, wherever they might be in the state, to make sure that they're strong and people know where to go to make sure that their particular needs are taken into account with those programs. At a more, I guess, strategic level, we have a range of forums that are being established with not only with local government but also with the industry. We've recently established the Recycling Victoria Local Government Chief Executives Forum, for instance. We've met twice already. We're meeting every 6 weeks with chief executives around all the reforms that are going on in the local government, relevant to local government and the local government space. That's a really, really valuable forum for us to sort of hear from local government directly, hear from the different parts of local government, but also a way of, presenting one voice, one view to to the whole local government framework. So we've got a local government advisory committee that the government is establishing as well, which is a statutory committee that will also provide advice back to RV about what's working, what's not working, and so forth, to really help us understand where we should be, spending our time with local government and focusing, our collective precious resources. We haven't got resources to do everything, but we really need to understand where are the right interventions and make sure we put our valuable resources into those areas. We want to do, I guess we want to have that engagement at different levels, both bespoke to the programs, also more strategic across all our programs and our broader relationship. And we want to do that also, I'm really, quite a fan of in-person visits, and that was, shown by what we have done already, in the first 10 months of just getting around the state. So we want to try and continue that. We recognise there's a lot of people that want to talk. So there's a little bit of, being pragmatic around that and using, forums like this as well to complement, but we do want to make sure that we get out into the regions and get out into the metro areas and visit local government in where they are, and really see firsthand some of the issues and some of the opportunities and challenges, of course, that local government might be facing.
That's a big program of engagement that you've got underway with that CEO forum in particular. What are the issues at the top of the list of them wanting to talk about? Is it the rollout of the additional bins that we're starting to see with glass and FOGO across the state? Would that be the number one issue?
Yeah, we've had a number of things that we've talked about already. One of the issues is, of course, where we're up to with developing standards for curbside, for the curbside system. So as your members would be well aware, that the government has put that policy in place to have 4 curbside services in place by 2030. So 2030 for our organics, our FOGO bins, but for 2027 for the glass bins. That's happening, I think a lot of councils aren't sort of waiting for the end of this decade to put those in. We're seeing, the latest figures are something like 75% of councils already offering FOGO services now across Victoria, and something like 30% have already got their separate glass service in place already. So they're the sorts of issues that, they're the things that are happening right now on the ground for local government. So we're talking about that. We're also talking about the rollout of container deposit system, which local government has a really important role to play from a number of different perspectives, both sort of helping our network operators. These are the three network operators that have been appointed across Victoria. They're working in particular zones, both metro and regional zones across Victoria. And those zones have been demarcated on the basis of council boundaries, just to ensure that that alignment with the relevant councils can happen as effectively as possible. So councils are really important in terms of the planning provisions for the infrastructure that needs to be put in place for container deposit. We have something like 600 different pieces of infrastructure that have been put in right across the state for the startup of container deposit on the 1st of November this year. And obviously councils have a really essential planning role. So it's making sure that we can work really effectively with council at pace to get the right outcomes, but also get them obviously as quickly as possible. But also CDS, of course, complements the curbside system as well. So we're out at the moment in consultation with local government around a protocol that's something that's part of my authority to prepare and to authorise. But the protocol helps us define how local government will benefit from CDS with the containers that are returned through the curbside system. Right. So again, there's a financial support system there as well through CDS. So yeah, of course, councils and local government chiefs are really interested in terms of how they can help, but also how they can, quite rightly get some benefit from the systems that are being rolled out at the moment.
The container deposit scheme, you've got some experience, of course, with those schemes from South Australia, haven't you? Which must be valuable.
I don't like talking about it too much, Chris, because South Australia's been doing container deposit for 45 years. We've all grown up. I've grown up with container deposit. As I've been going around, I have been talking to councils and to stakeholders just around the broader issues that we can expect over time with container deposit, because as much as it's another scheme that helps us recover containers, it's obviously going to have a really strong benefit for containers that are found in the litter stream here in Victoria as well. I have noticed the level of litter of containers here is quite evidently, it's a survey of one, but it's quite evident to me that it's very different to what you don't see in South Australia, and right. we've taken that for granted. South Australians have taken that for granted for a long time. I think that's going to make a real impact on that. But more importantly, I think what I've seen with systems like container deposit in South Australia is what it does to behaviour change and what it does to social employment as well, with a lot of disadvantaged groups. The Scouts in South Australia very proudly say that the most resourced and well-funded Scouts in Australia, because they have quite a significant role in the collection process and the processing systems. All those opportunities are coming and will be seen here in Victoria. It's very exciting, and so it's really nice knowing what a measure like container deposit can do, well beyond the environmental and sustainability aspects, because there are very strong social and very strong economic benefits from CDS. And to sort of now be responsible for putting one of the largest systems in place here in Australia is very exciting. So really looking forward to seeing that roll out over not only from 1st November, but just seeing how that progresses and changes behaviour over the next few years.
Well, best of luck with that. We're out of time, Tony. There's so much more we could talk about. I'd love to talk to you more broadly about circular economy and your observations there. So perhaps open invitation to come back in the not too distant future to chat more.
I'd love to do that, Chris, anytime.
Thank you very much for spending some time with us today, and congratulations on the appointment. I know it's not so new anymore, and best of luck with those major projects that you're rolling out in the coming months.
Thank you, Chris.
Tony Circelli, the CEO of Recycling Victoria, here with us on today's edition of VLGA Connect.